I guess like I'm not sure like how extensive you guys' history is with music. So I mean, if it's like a big history, then maybe like a more briefer version of it, or because like this, I spoke to some people who are just like, I just graduated high school and this is the first time I grabbed a guitar. I was like, so like, how did you guys start out in music?
Yeah, so I mean, it is fragmented is probably the best answer to the question. So I think music has always been there. So like for myself as a guitarist, my nan got me my first guitar when I was in grade 3.
Your nan is your grandmother, right? To make sure. We all different names for our grandmothers.
Yeah. So I mean, so I've been playing guitar ever since I was a kid, in bands sort of through like high school, early university, but then literally like a 20-year hiatus of doing nothing.
Were you even like playing music during that hiatus?
A little bit, but it was definitely the guitar was more of a piece of furniture that was collecting dust and and whatnot. And it was no particular reason or design behind that. It's just like other life events get in the way, and it just wasn't sort of front of mind for a long time.
Okay.
But then sort of after my dad passed away back in 2016, that was kind of got me refocused on starting to play again, just sort of recreationally.
Why would your dad's passing?
So my mom and dad were always really supportive of me playing music as a young person. So it was just sort of it was a combination of that, and also looking at what I was starting to review as sort of important in life as well.
Yeah.
For something that I, have absolutely enjoyed doing for like pretty much all my life. And I mean, music was always sort of on my radar, even when I wasn't playing, but it just sort of prompted me to pick up the guitar again because it was very therapeutic. And just sort of got interested again. But then it was also an opportunity, like having not done it for a long time, just like what type of equipment are people using? So kind of getting down that rabbit hole again was sort of fun. And then getting together to play, we probably first started playing not as Class of 91 specifically, more as sort of just a bunch of friends getting together to jam 2018 or so.
Had you guys known each other before the band, or?
Yeah, we've known each other just sort of like, probably the last like 5, 6, 7 years or so, plus or minus.
Yeah, probably plus a bit, but just socially in conversation, always centered kind of around music.
Yeah.
Until we picked up guitars, we didn't know them.
But for you, what was your trajectory? I should introduce both of you. Yeah. this is Ian and Brock from Class of 91. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of nice to kind of just sort of flow the conversation without having the intro, because I don't even know what to say to begin it. But yeah. So Brock, what was like your kind of like trajectory from the beginnings of music to like now?
Yeah, I mean the same thing. Ian and I grew up in an interesting time because like the music video was something that actually manifested in our youth. So those things sort of draw you to music, right? Watching the first VH1s and video hits and stuff, right? So music's always a big part of your life. So, I have uncles and whatnot that played guitar and stuff, and I was always curious. And I wasn't 3 when I got my first guitar. I think I was 12.
Grade 3.
Or grade 3, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Grade 3.
Ian child prodigy here.
But, so that's always been with me, you got to get through the first stages of soreness and understanding that it's actually takes a little bit of work. And then, high school, same thing, sort of kicked in, bands, lots of great music.
Yeah.
I landed in Vancouver in 92 just as grunge was exploding. So, I mean, you could not, you couldn't ignore the music scene at that time.
I guess like right next to Seattle.
Yeah. I mean, it was right there. I mean, I was watching bands like Moist and Biff Naked coming out of Chrome Dog live in the bars and stuff. So
cool.
It's there, right? So you try to be a part of that. And but likewise, I mean, raising a family and stuff, guitar was always there.
Yeah.
But it only really became something in probably about that 2018 timeframe when we decided to crack a beer and strum a guitar and see what it was all about.
But had you played in a band before this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the band?
So two of us together, no. But so Steve and I, like our drummer, have known each other since probably about grade 10. So we've played in bands together for a fair, good chunk of our high school, early university times. Fred, our bass player, this was the first. Well, he's played in bands before, but this is the first time he's played in a band that's played original music.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's been an interesting sort of journey for him, kind of getting used to that. But his dad was like a session drummer, so I mean he grew up around around music. He always jokes about like roadieing for his dad like
Carrying all his equipment for him and stuff.
lugging into his dad's drum kits around and stuff. Probably the only sort of like constant was Steve. Like Steve's played in bands, pretty much all the way through, but he's sort of interesting. Like when he and I played together back in the day, his main sort of jam was like sampling, like turntables, trumpet, like a whole bunch of other stuff like that. He actually didn't learn how to play the drums until probably like sometime in early to mid university. He's always had an interest in it. So he ended up taking drum lessons from Peter Von Alten, who played with Skydiggers and a bunch of other bands there, and sort of learned to play drums for that. So that's kind of where his trajectory was going. So he was playing with a bunch of local bands there through the aughts and stuff. But again, it's like one of these, like he and I have always wanted to get back to playing music together, particularly now that he was a drummer.
Yeah, but the fact that you guys were playing together, but like Brock, how do you fit in like, was it your first time playing with both of them, or were you playing with Steven?
The easiest way to understand it is in 2018, Ian, I assume it was Ian, reached out to a group of people and said, "Hey, do you want to go make some noise in a basement?" So I think there was originally 6 of us.
Oh, really?
We all just kind of showed up with our remember and I think we had a small list of cover songs.
We're just jamming.
Kath being a big with and Death Cab for Cutie, some Radiohead, some all that kind of stuff. And we just started mucking around, and then as life took over the course of that first 6 or 7 months, a couple dropped off, and then I think the 4 of us were looking at each other when Ian brought in an original piece and said, "Hey, do you mind if we try this?"
Okay.
Thus was born Class of '91.
Well, a curious question is, were the other 2 members playing guitar? What were they doing?
Yeah, they were actually.
Yeah.
So you had like 4
But they
guitars?
weren't members. This was just a jam
Yeah.
session.
When you were jamming with multiple guitars.
Yeah.
Like I guess 4 guitars. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. But a lot of it was just more to get together socially, to play music. And for a lot of us, like just using myself as an example, I mean, I hadn't played with other humans since probably 98. So even getting back into that kind of, sort of trajectory again, it's one thing to play solo in your basement or whatever, right? But when you're actually trying to like, interact with other musicians, and everyone's kind of like trying to lock into their different stuff. Like that was a re-education right there. Yeah. But I get a lot of it because we were just doing covers, and just what I say, it was a once a week kind of get together, just as a social gathering. But then once, like Brock said, like life kind of kicks in, and a couple of our friends there that they weren't able to sort of commit more kind of on a consistent basis, then we kind of started looking at like, well, maybe we can try writing some original stuff and see how that locks in. And that was sort of where Class of '91 started as a band.
I mean, researching like interview questions about music, they say one of the worst questions you can ask a band is where did their band name come from? But I still find it endlessly fascinating. So I'm going to ask the question.
No, it's the answer is actually fairly simple. That was the year that Steve and I graduated from high school.
Oh, okay, all right, cool.
And then maybe a slightly more new. Like it's funny because particularly when we first started playing, a lot of people would see Class of '91 and they think it was like some like kind of like '90s tribute act or something like this, right? So like you see on like the Las Vegas Strip or something, But it was also like that's sort of a good, like that mid to late 80s, early 90s, like that's what's baked into our DNA musically, right? Because we grew up on like The Cure, Fugazi, Depeche Mode, like all of that kind of stuff was stuff that we were exposed to all the time. And that's sort of what I found particularly interesting, not creating original music for like a good 2 decades and then getting back into it. The first things that come out naturally is stuff that you were exposed to in that very formative period of your life, right? Like you're sort of like mid to late teens, early 20s. It's just it's there.
Yeah, I've heard it before. Is that like you can't like undo it? No, it's like it's sort of like as your brain is forming at that period of time in your life, it's sort of like the neural pathways are being formed, and you can't undo that. Yeah,
it's not funny. And just an aside though is, I mean, those songs are the songs that we don't have to think about the lyrics for. you know them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even if you have to relearn the chord progressions for a song, one of the ones we do is Pixie song. It's actually there.
What's Pixie song you're talking about?
Where's My Mind is
Okay,
one, but yeah, we cover in the early stages of the band. But the chords and the lyrics are embedded. Like it's not like you have to go back and learn them like the songs that are being written now. Yeah. So to Ian's point, that stuff's embedded in your DNA.
Yeah. Okay.
You grew up with this stuff. You don't have to think about it. So it makes it quite easy and natural to play.
Yeah. This is kind of like maybe it's an unhappy accident. Because so the abbreviation of the band name is CO91. You know what I'm going to say?
COVID.
Yeah, not anymore. It's not. Yeah.
But if it's like a really quick glance, because you reverse the 9 and the 1, and then I guess you get rid of the vid.
Yeah.
But
for the record, we came first. COVID came second.
But is that good like free advertising maybe or no?
It was a bit oddball advertising because I mean a lot of our initial like we had stickers and some hoodies and stuff like that there too with the Code 91 abbreviation on there, and Steve's like kick drum head is still has the old Code 91 on there.
Yeah.
You were definitely getting some funny looks there during the early stages of COVID. I remember, I think it was Fred was saying the story once. He was actually wearing like his Code 91 hoodie, and like people are like looking at him like it's like inappropriate or something. But again, it was just that was a pure coincidence.
But enough so that we changed the logo.
So you made like the full.
We made it a full class.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Okay. Geez. All right. I had no idea.
We've kind of gotten back into using like Code 91 as a bit of an abbreviation. We figured enough times passed now that.
It's also tied to all our social media and everything too. Yeah. Right? It's not like we recreated the monikers and stuff. Right?
Yeah, and it's the year 2019 is what it's based off of, and so now we're 4 years away from that. So how does the Song Factory work for you guys? Like I call it a Song Factory.
It's a good way to describe it. So kind of the easiest way to sort of describe it, and like it's funny because particularly in sort of its the nascent stages of writing songs, a lot of it was more of a time management type of issue, right? So typically the way that we'll do something is that we don't often get together and jam out songs like just from scratch, right? Oftentimes what we'll do is like we'll come up with maybe an idea, or I'll come up with a concept that I want to maybe try to tackle. I'll record a demo version of it in my home studio, right? So just like using Auto Drummer, I'll like struggle my way through like a bass line, come up with a couple of parallel guitar parts, do some scratch vocals, and then flip it around to everybody. Everyone will have an opportunity to kind of like, take a listen to it. But particularly we find now, like the longer that we've played together, we've kind of like locked into, sort of like different tones and different styles of playing together and playing off of each other. Like everyone will then contribute their own, like little like riffs or hooks or interpretations of it. And then we'll actually just rehearse that. And then that will sort of go into a song. I'm not one of these people that will have like a catalog of like 55 ideas, like in a notebook that I'm like, I very much like, I have to do like almost like a song at a time, just because once that earworm gets in there, I got to work it out until it kind of comes into something. But it's interesting, like, just to give you an example. So one of the songs off of our latest EP, Lost Stories, is called Pull Me Back Around. Yeah. And there's a drum hook that Steve does in the choruses. Like he's got this kind of like tom thing and this like ride cymbal thing, which that's his hook, right? But it totally, the first time he did that is like that totally locked in, and that just created like an energy in that chorus. Yeah. So again, it's just like the demoing is very much like just a basic template versus like, like it's not like an orchestration or anything. But sometimes like we'll come up with an idea, like maybe there's like a bass hook or something like that we think we could kind of like tease out a little bit. So we may like kind of offer that up as an idea that we want to build on.
So I guess the options are is that you're kind of coming up with ideas and you bring it to the band, or the band's kind of jamming it out together. Is that kind of like the way it functions? I guess. Yeah?
I'd say most of the times like I'm presenting an idea to the band, and then we'll kick guitars on it.
It's a well fleshed out song that Ian usually brings to the table. Yeah. And then he'll sort of show us how he understands the song in his head. Yeah. And then as the band plays it out, we sort of find our parts in it.
Yeah, okay.
And then of course there's other dynamics to that too. So for example, I was not an electric guitar player until the band started. I mean, in my teens I was, but
Yeah.
so now I've got pedal board that I didn't have before.
Oh, no, I can't even handle that pedal boards. Man.
But as I'm playing out the concept that Ian's presented forward, I start playing around with my pedals because I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know what's going to sound good in the song, what's going to work for me.
Okay. Yeah.
So then we have, I think, the optionality to bring forward our ideas within that, and then if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
About the pedal boards, just as a question, I have trouble with multiple pedals, and so how do you switch one off and the other one on at the exact same time? Do you use 2 feet? What goes on here exactly?
Yeah, it's funny though, because a lot of it is like there is a little bit of gymnastics that is involved, right? Because like I love pedals, right? And I think one of the reasons why I love pedals is I'm not a very technical guitar player, so I look at other options to kind of like flush out sound, or maybe introduce some like sort of some subtle like either tones or some atmospherics into my playing.
Yeah.
But definitely like the first couple of times that we played live as a band, it's just like, because you try to sing into that microphone, you're trying to like pay attention to like your chord patterns, you're not screwing that up, and then watching your feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I guess like if you're gonna have to switch between 2 pedals at the exact same time, you kind of like switch one towards the end of the bar, and then is that how that goes?
Yeah,
down,
so
maybe?
like a lot of like riffs and some of the like, we're not like a solo heavy band, but like there are a couple of songs that do have sort of solo-y parts in it. Like I do literally have to do like a 1, 2, 3 type of thing, right?
Like your foot?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
But it is a sequence. Like I have to like turn that one off before I turn that one off before I turn that one off, and then get into it, right? So but that just becomes muscle memory after.
It does, and there's some cheats too. I know, and look how far we've come. I play a Jaguar, so I have a circuit switch on mine as well too.
What's the
There's a lead circuit in the electronics on my guitar, and there's a rhythm circuit, and I actually switch from the lead to the rhythm as I'm turning the pedal off. And that's a bit tricky because it has to be done right. So, one of my cheats is live. I'll drop the last note of the lead.
Yeah.
And it just gets buried in the sonics that Ian has.
Yeah. But when you're recording, are you just like you're not using multiple tracks to capture all this? Like you're like
recording is different, right? So recording, you can play it through, and we can capture the full essence of the song.
Yeah, you can do repeats the guitar on different pedals and stuff, right?
And it's achievable. I mean, all these things, that switch that I need to do is achievable, but the chances of screwing it up, especially if we have it as our start song, I'm reticent to make that mistake. So I found a way I've manipulated my dance, if you will, to make sure that the song carries on and I'm not contributing to the first giggle on stage.
But yeah, to your point though, I mean that is one of the, I guess, sort of the gifts that come along with sort of the digital recording age as well, and being a DIY band. Like we're not on the clock, right? Like we're not being charged studio time, and the record company's not breathing down our necks. So you can literally like record like 18 guitar tracks if you felt inclined to do so, and stack them individually, right? So stuff that we may do live where we're like using like maybe 2 pedals stacked on top of each other, you can theoretically do them as 2 different tracks and blend them in if that's you wanted, without being overkill about it. Like we're not trying to like record like Rumors or something by Fleetwood Mac or something.
Like on this EP, like the guitar tone is like really, I don't know, crisp and clean. I shouldn't say clean, it's distorted, but I mean like it's a really. I struggle to get a good guitar tone that I can actually like hear the notes that are being played, and like it. Anyway, like what kind of like pedals are you using? Like what's the strategy for?
We're just adding an hour to the podcast.
Maybe just keep it a shorter version of it then.
Yeah, so I mean, recording wise, I mean, it's actually not that difficult. I mean, it's for myself, I always have like a sort of like more of a sort of a transparent overdrive. So that's gives me a bit of crunch without being like hyper distorted. And then I'll stack that with a Tube Screamer style overdrive, and that's my basic sound.
Okay.
So depending on sort of the intensity of the song, most like sort of the heavier ones are typically those 2 pedals at once, and then recording them, obviously, like I would dial back like sort of like the level of distortion, which maybe makes it still casts that like that heavy crunch, but it's not so overpowering that it becomes like a like a metal song.
Yeah,
or something,
yeah.
you know?
If you're both like had to have guitar tones, are you like negotiating with each other on how to get your tones right with each other, or is just like
A
you roll
little
with it?
bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually introduced a new guitar into the band just to sort of help carve out a new sonic sound in the rhythm department.
Yeah.
But we do discuss what the next pedal I should buy is, for example.
Yeah, okay.
So I operate off of an overdrive and a fuzz that we picked up out of Nashville.
Yeah.
And that's my primary sound. But that was curated. We worked through that and sort of developed that over time, and that's become sort of the baseline. But if we're going to introduce a new sound or
So if I rewind, you say curated, like meaning that you tested many different things out and then kind of like sort of decided on a certain one, like over time?
well, I draw from Ian's experience on pedal. I'm new to the pedal world.
Okay, yeah.
So he's got a better sense of first of all, what's in his head.
Yeah.
Second of all, what sonic inclusions will benefit the band's sound. I can't go left wing on this or far right and grab some new experimental pedal and say, I think this is part of the song.
Yeah,
So we'll
okay.
have the discussion, and you just can do some basic research, right? And you can sort of see how you can stack overdrives, fuzzes, and distortions to get a sound.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, you just made a reference to it, the metal sound. We can get a little bit heavy.
Yeah.
So, then we'd have a conversation. Are we going too far metal? Do we want to pull that back? And how do we do that? Maybe we need to drop the tone or the distortion. And so we've been tweaking this for almost 4 years now.
Yeah, and I think the playing style has definitely evolved as well, because again, when we like, if you look at some of the very, very first songs that we played, the guitar parts are almost like identical, right? Like he and I are playing exactly the same power chords and exactly the same ranges.
Yeah.
And we actually got some good feedback once, because we were actually sound checking that song, and they're like, it's like can't quite tell where one stops and one begins, because it's the same thing, just right stage, left stage, essentially, right? So that kind of got us into the habit of like, if he's playing like a low chord, I'll do the same thing an octave up, right? I do like a lot of open,
make it a lot more thicker and stuff too, right?
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that actually helped design a lot of the sound too, because like I will typically maybe sort of gravitate towards more like kind of like sus chords and open chords, where like there's like a lot of open notes going at the same time. So like, for example, if I play like a high E power chord, I'll do it, but to keep like the G, the B, and the E wide open as well, right? So it just kind of gives this big jangly sound while he's like down doing like a low E power chord, right? Then that actually, particularly when you're recording it and you start panning that stuff left and right and you EQ them at opposites of each other, it actually creates what I think has become kind of like the Class 91 sort of signature heavy sound, which works well. So
so like in the recording studio, I guess like all the recording. I mean, it's a home studio, it's still a recording studio. I shouldn't dismiss it as not being a
call it
studio.
what you want.
But so like you're producing yourself, and it's like all done like through computers, and like how does that work? I guess. Yeah.
So typically the way that we work, like the one sort of I guess deficit of that setup is that we don't have really the ability to record the entire band playing at once, right? So
how come you don't have the ability to do that? I guess
it's just more the size of the room, the ability to be able to like basically cordon off microphone bleed from like drums into guitar amps and stuff like that. It's just logistically doesn't work. So the way that we've done things to date is Steve will do his drums first. So he'll basically record with the demo version in his earphones and play along to that.
Is it on a click, or is it just?
It's clicky enough there, just because like when we're doing a demo, we're typically like using like an auto drummer and stuff like that too. So the rhythm is pretty consistent. Now again, there's pluses and minuses to that, because if there's any slight deviation that we would naturally kind of gravitate to live, you got to really kind of negotiate with that a little bit.
Hard,
it's tricky, but he seems to have it down to a general science.
Okay.
So he'll do his drum kit first, then Fred will come in, do his bass, Brock will come in, do his rhythm, I'll come in, do my guitar parts, and then I'll do my vocals. And then we just sack it. So Steve he's responsible for the actual recording process, and he's a very, very good editor. So like, when it comes to like sort of like comping tracks and that type of stuff, he's really, really diligent with that kind of stuff. I don't have the patience to do that, but he will do that and work his way through a song. So like,
sorry.
no, go on.
I was just saying that you're mixing and mastering this as well, right?
Not mastering it,
Okay.
but when Steve's got everything sort of edited, he'll flip the files over to me.
Yeah.
I'll mix it at my home studio, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and sort of like if there's anything that we want to add or maybe like just sort of like modify it in the mix. So Steve and I will kind of do that. Then we'll listen to it as a band, make sure that we're all happy with it. And then, the mastering is the one thing that we don't touch. So our last EP, we had it mastered by Christian Montano in Toronto. So he runs a place called Montano Mastering, and then Stefan Jurwitz there from Kick.
Kick Me Records,
Yeah, so he did our first one there. So
yeah. How do you feel about doing like double track vocals? I'm not sure if you're even actually doing double track vocals.
I do double tracks, yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's like done in a way that's like not quite audible as double tracked.
Yeah, so typically my hack for vocals is I've always enjoyed the double track. Like if you can go back to like some John Lennon type stuff, right? Bob Mould is a big influence of mine there from Husker Du and Sugar and his solo stuff. He's big on double vocaling as well. Yeah, that seems to fit my vocal style well. Kind of gives it a bit of a thicker sound. Like I'm not a very confident singer on a good day, so I mean I do find that actually flushes the tonality of it a little bit, and then I'm big on the sort of the stereo wide delay with a bit of saturation on there. That's kind of my signature vocal mix for Class 91 stuff.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with like every like vocal like performance I record is like I always want to double it up.
Yeah,
and like even if you just like turn down one of the takes.
Yep.
You kind of like you can't hear it being there, but it somehow just like thickens it up a little bit. Yeah.
It's a good technique. So yeah.
So the EP, this most recent EP was released in 2022, and it's called Lost Stories.
Yep.
If I may ask, the title, if it has a certain meaning.
Yeah. So the title was actually out of the chorus of one of the songs on the album. So it wasn't kind of like, we came up with the sort of the album title first and then filled in the blanks with the songs. It was just sort of it was taken in part from something that you dropped once, Lost Stories. It was in
one of my stories.
One of your stories that you'd written back when you were doing that, and then kind of incorporate that into a lyric in a chorus of one of the songs, and then because there's a few sort of themes that hit on that particular album, and we just sort of thought it was a good kind of an all-encompassing, because a lot of it has to do with like there's like mental health issues, a lot of the experiences that we collectively all had through COVID as well, right? And like that's so like that, it just seemed like a very appropriate title for where that album was going with there.
And also, I called it an EP, but I realized it can technically be considered an album. Is it an EP or an album? I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
And the band told me when we have a similar situation, it's like you have like 7 or 8 songs. It's like in between the two. Okay. So I'm referring to it as an EP, but anyway.
But we've always called it an EP. But people have called us out on that. It's like I don't know. I don't know where the limit is. Not a 45. That much I can tell you. So.
Okay, so you're talking about the idea of COVID here. Okay, because of the song Hideaways.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to try to segue into different things here because I have them in different orders. But
okay.
This was a song about COVID.
There's 1 or 2 songs about COVID. Yeah.
And this one was more about like walking around like an empty street, like empty streets, an empty street, but many empty streets. Just like there's nobody around. Can you elaborate on it a little bit?
Yeah.
About that?
So I. Like during COVID, I was always fascinated by either photo essays or whatever that people were taking of like cities and metropolises that were just completely devoid of people.
Yeah.
Like I could think back to New York Times had done a big photo essay on New York as an example, right? And so this is a city of like millions and millions and millions of people with literally nobody on the street, with exception of like some dude riding his bike like through Times Square, in the middle of the road, right? So I was fascinated by that concept, right? And oftentimes when you heard these people's experiences of doing that and walking around cities that were literally like almost devoid of street life, a lot of people like talked about it in a very, very positive way. It was very freeing. It was like just like once in a I mean, say once in a lifetime. It's like probably once in a a century type of situation. Touch wood.
It actually is wood too. Yeah.
But I thought it was kind of an interesting sort of a polar opposite to a song like These Four Walls, which is literally about confinement, right?
Oh, okay.
So with that song as sort of like, and there's a lot of songs on the album which are almost sort of like, they are sort of like mirror images of each other, right? So there could be like a negative and a positive type of approach to it.
Yeah.
So that song was very much impacted by, like, my mom was in a retirement residence, right?
Yeah.
So long-term care facilities and retirement residents are an example where people were like literally locked into rooms with no contact with the outside world at all. People that were living in like, shoebox condominiums and just basically being completely isolated. Like, to me, like, that's a massive, like that's another experience as well. That is, I think one for the history books, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I have like a theory here, and maybe
fire away. Theories are good.
I guess the fun thing about art is that you can interpret it in different ways, and you can say like, that was totally not our intentions, or maybe this is your intentions. Yeah. I guess a lot of this album is like very like, use the word like dense, like a lot of like dense guitars, like it's like so I would say that Hideaways is probably has the most sparseness to it, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it is also the longest song on the album as well.
Yeah.
And I'm making a connection between the idea of sparseness being like a sense of like the streets are empty.
Yeah. So
like less people around. And then like, okay, this might come as an insult when I first say it, but I don't mean it that way. It's like by the length of the song symbolizing like the never ending length of like COVID. Not saying the song feels like never ending, but like, you know what I mean?
No.
But it's like it's the longest one, and it's like COVID was like we're not quite sure when it's going to end, sort of thing.
Yeah, no. Yeah. That's it. I might actually adopt that.
It wasn't true then. It wasn't intentional.
No, it wasn't an intentional thing. It's funny when we actually first started jamming that song during COVID.
Yeah.
Like, we actually had a friend of ours that ran a coffee shop. Basically gave us that space to get together to jam, right?
Was like undercover because it was during COVID?
No, it was basically like it
was large enough to accommodate us when the limit. This is more.
Oh yeah, because there's nowhere to play actually.
Well,
too, right?
When limitations were 5 people in an enclosed space.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we were able to space out and maintain adherence to the law at the time.
Yeah.
But our studio is way too small. I mean, we were on top of each other.
Yeah,
so
okay.
It allowed us to be comfortable with our getting together because we have families and kids in school and stuff. We couldn't be bringing that back either. So we masked up, brought our gear in, masked up while we set up.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that in our studio.
Yeah.
So it gave us the opportunity to stretch out.
Yeah.
And play in the
So we started jamming Hideaways during that period, and like when we were jamming it was even longer than when we ended up recording. Like it's one of these songs because there's actually not a lot. There's actually not to your sort of your sparsity comments. There's actually not a lot going on in that song. A lot of, like, the bass line is very trancy, it's very repetitious. The guitar parts are kind of a bit more like a little more ambient, I guess, for lack of a better way, compared to some of our other stuff.
Yeah.
Brock's on the acoustic on that one. So when we were actually jamming that one, it was like it's very shoegazy, trancy. Like you could actually lock into the rhythm. Steve's got some interesting drum stuff going on there, which is kind of complementary. So we ended up like creating this like almost like this epic odyssey, but then it's just like it just got a little bit too big for itself there. So we started like knocking some parts out of it, and then got into Steve's actually really, really good at saying like, try this here, right? Knock this out and go from this to this, like just as a sort of like an alternate, sort of perspective on the initial concept.
Yeah.
So eventually it got into its current format, which again, it's like it's 6+ minutes long. It is a long.
If memory serves too, we spent a lot of time debating how do we finish this song.
Yeah.
Like how is it a sharp end? Does it taper out? How long does this sequence go? And I think at the end of the day, it was sort of the drum sequence with a push on the drums that allowed us to sort of say, okay, this is where we're going to end. But that was developed over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And even though it is maybe a slightly simpler song in a lot of ways. It was actually one of the harder songs to kind of lock into a format that we're comfortable with. It's funny, some of our favorite songs to play have always kind of had that kind of curse attached to it. So like it sucks, and all of a sudden it's really good.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. But that like you're sort of like birthing a, I don't know if you use the word birthing or not, but like a song is bad. Like you keep working on it and then it gets good and then it becomes like a pristine song, I guess. Is that that's
or just something that we're comfortable with, because there's just something that's just not locking in for whatever reason that could be, right? Whether it's like the format of it, the patterning of it, the tone of it, like just something's just not locking in the way that we're like, the solution's there. It's just that we haven't found it yet.
It reminds me of like a stand-up comedian who's telling a joke that's not quite working, and then when they finally get it right, it's like one of their funniest jokes, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's very, very much the same. So like the ending of the song, like Steve had the idea where he just wanted to kind of like just go like just pound on the drums. And he's just like, turn almost every pedal on your board on and just one chord and just go at it. And that's all of a sudden like we had a conclusion to the song, because to Brock's point before, like, you know, if we record this and we fade it out, like, does it just stop? Like, how do you end a 6 minute long something or other, you know? So that was the kind of the angle that Steve proposed, and it just worked. And it's super fun to play live too. Like, it's a great, very trancy, shoegazy type of song to play.
The lyrics in it. So like, do you still see ghosts chasing shadows through empty streets? Is that all reference to the photographs in like New York and stuff?
Yeah,
like that?
a lot of it. I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of fill in the blanks there. It was like I need a word to rhyme with this word type of thing, but a lot of it was very much inspired by that. Cool. Like I did have a lot of pictures and stuff like that I was just sort of referencing for that, and just other concepts of solitude and aloneness, but not in a negative way though, right? It's just a very kind of almost like a freeing type of way, but a lot of it, again, it is very much drawn from that sort of through that lens of history. So.
But speaking of history, I got a segue here. My first segue. The first song is "Look How Far We've Come."
Yep.
And I'm going to read off the description that I read it with it, which questions why, over 30 years since the end of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear conflict between nations is again making headlines. I mean, I'm assuming I'm aware of current events, but this is referring to the potential U.S.-Russia conflict, with nuclear conflict.
in part. So again, if you're looking at 1991 as a marker in history, that's when the Cold War ended.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Okay. That was
the Berlin Wall came down, and that we grew up in the age of
nuclear mad. Yeah.
Were you have memories of feeling like there was going to be a nuclear fallout?
Yeah, I mean, we lived through the Red Dawn movies, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
You watched the wall come down. I mean, although we didn't see it here in Canada so much, you understood that mutually assured destruction was something that was, I think, taught to us. I understood that.
It was taught. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. The world was at a pretty precarious place.
Yeah, there were
Gorbachev was a household name for me. I knew who he was. I knew what, perestroika and all those things. Those are terms that I understood.
There were air raid sirens around Ottawa. Like, I could still remember, like...
Oh, really?
I remember asking my dad, like, what's that thing? He's like, oh, that's an air raid siren.
But the idea is that if like, a nuclear bomb went off, then everyone would know, the siren would go off and people would know where to like, take cover in the basements and stuff like that.
Theoretically, yeah. So.
Oh, wow. So they actually have them set up in Ottawa.
Well, the Defen bunker was actually still operational.
Still military.
Oh, man. Okay,
so these were realities for us growing up, and then we watched like Ian said, the Berlin Wall come down. We understood that the Soviet Union had collapsed, and it was in a transitionary period.
Yeah, okay.
So then to hear the word nuclear as a headline, regardless of what state conflict it was attached to, it was just kind of like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah, and that's very much where the title of the song comes from, right? It's just like it's very tongue in cheek. It's like, again, not that problem ever went away, but it wasn't front of mind. I mean, it's one of those existential issues that will always be there as long as that kind of armament exists, right? That will always be there, but it was never front of mind. Like that period of history was kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air. It was just like, okay, like maybe like, cooler minds have prevailed here, and that's not something that's really going to potentially, like, it's not even impact our lives, right? It's going to be game over at that point. So, like, look how far we've come. It's just kind of like that head shaking. It's like, there's a couple of things that people aren't very, very good at is, like, as soon as a living memory of something goes away, then the next batch of people are going to come along, and then the same problem is going to come up again, right? So that's very much where that's just like for us is a head shaker. It's just like, we lived through that. Now we're having to explain to our kids' generation what this means, right? It's like
another thing I was wanting to point out. No, not sure if this is intentional. Again, maybe I'm reading too much in it. Is that the beginning, like, I guess the riff is like dan it. To me, in this context, it sort of sounds like a timer of, like, countdown to nuclear war.
That's a line I actually play. I mean, obviously introduced by Ian, but it's funny because when I play that, I'm thinking about the air raid sirens.
Oh yeah, it's the siren, kind of the siren exactly.
I actually boost that so that it comes out clear and sharp. I think I've got probably a 1 or 2 decibel kick on that.
Yeah.
So that it rings out, and it's actually a great way of sort of introducing the theme of the song. I think it's actually brilliant. I think he did a really good job with that.
Without going, like, completely over the top and, like, putting a bunch of samples like air like that. Like that might be a little bit overkill, but again, I think it gets the point across without being completely blatant, but it's definitely there for sure. Okay,
so for the song Pull Me Back Around, it chronicles a protagonist's struggles with anxiety and self-imposed sense of shame. Is this like the idea of, like, the mind sort of being like its own worst enemy in a lot of ways?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, one theme that we take very seriously as a band, and it's it obviously impacts like across all age brackets, right? But is the mental health angle of life, I think, in general, right? And particularly writing music from middle age. That's, again, a lens that we can very easily relate to, because when you're looking at concepts of, like, what does success look like? Where am I? Like, what have I achieved in life? Those types of things, right? It's a lot of people that we've known through life, and people we've been exposed to. These are big struggles a lot of people go through. So that song is very much trying to encapsulate it. Again, it's metaphorical in a lot of ways, but it's really kind of looking at somebody's basically putting on a bit of a brave face while they're struggling with, like, anxiety and mental health issues, right?
But the idea being that they didn't live up to the expectation. I guess, like, they're hoping there'd be somewhere else by a certain age or something like that.
Yeah,
kind of thing,
it's kind of like a hybrid of a bunch of different things, right?
Yeah.
But I can think of examples through experiences that or people that I've talked to, or friends or whatever, right? It's like maybe you're trying to go down a particular life path. And you're kind of being led to believe that path is going to go in a specific type of way. Then all of a sudden it just gets completely shut down for some particular type of reason, right? Then you start second guessing yourself and, like, okay, like, maybe I'm not quite cut out to be doing this. Maybe I'm not smart enough to be able to do this. Maybe I'm not talented enough to be able to do this. And that's something that particularly, again, it's always there, but looking at it again through the sort of the lens of our generation, right? or the point of life that we're in. Yeah. That's something a lot of people struggle with, right? Where it's in, whether it's, career success, whether it's just like, any type of thing like that, is very much what that song is trying to encapsulate.
And is there not any comfort that, like, everyone is feeling that way? So it's like everyone, like, no one's alone. Like everyone has, like, expectations. I guess maybe the song itself is comfort. Because even talking about it is
well, and that's where it kind of hints at that in the very, very last chorus, right? Where it's like, this is somebody that is struggling with this, but then there's somebody off to the side of them that's like, basically it's okay, right? So it's like, the head on your shoulder don't make a sound part, like that person's actually talking to someone that they care about these issues, and that person is basically giving them giving them a bit of a guiding path, right? Because again, like I can think of, times that I've struggled with this, that, and the other thing as well, right? I mean, it's very easy to internalize that, but I'll always give somebody the time of day that's having a problem, and I'll listen to them and give them advice. But I won't talk to somebody about the same thing that I'm feeling to somebody else, right? So
yeah, because everyone's afraid to reveal themselves, right?
Yeah. So there's always a bit of a vulnerability on that, and I mean, if you're for whatever reason you're just not there to be able to kind of like release some of those concerns or talk openly about it. I think a lot of people struggle with that type of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I think the flip side and the good aspect of that, I think the conversation about mental health is a lot more transparent now than it was like even five years ago.
Yeah.
COVID is probably shone a bit of a light on that, but it's not like any other type of injury. Like if I break my arm, you can see my arm cast. Right. If I'm struggling with anxiety or something like that, that's not something you can see. Right. And if I put on a good game face, you may think, oh, that guy's, he's doing okay. And we've met a lot of people in our lives that are not doing okay for a whole host of different reasons. Right.
No, I agree with you. It's a lot better. I'm also just sort of like a little bit disappointed that I often see people posting like, what is it, like today's mental health day. But and like they're trying to draw awareness to it, but I guess it doesn't seem to be good enough. I guess.
Yeah,
like,
but I think
it's the right direction, but it's like it's not helping enough. I guess. Yeah.
I think there's like still a lot of stigma around that.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, if we fast forward like 5, 10, 15 years into the future, I would hope that the conversation about mental health is looked on basically like, people talk openly about cancer as an example, and nobody bats an eye to that, but there's still some kind of like angle to mental health. Like I'm weak. There's something wrong with me.
Or also this the belief that it's all under your control. Like if you have a mental health issue, people are like, just suck it up. Yeah. And everything's fine. Kind of stuff like that. That's like,
and that's a big part of it. Right. I mean, like, we didn't exactly grow up in the, a generation of sharing and caring either, right? So I was like, but suck it up. You're weak. Don't cry. Like, don't be a baby. Like, those are all very, tangible things, right? That's not helpful.
The definition of mental health still has to mature a little bit as well, too, because mental health can be the anxiety, the depression, but it can be something as simple as contemplating midlife in a retrospective way, too, right?
Yeah. Because
as you get closer to the end of your life, and at 50, we're starting to look, it's half gone, right?
Yeah.
That is still mental health.
Yeah.
How am I approaching a transition in my life?
Yeah.
But it's a broad spectrum, and the stuff we talk about over a beer is probably tied to mental health. So there should be, and there isn't any stigma attached to that. But once you encapsulate it with the title mental health, it becomes harder to talk about, I suppose. So maybe the definition just needs to be massaged a little bit.
Yeah.
And will be likely over the course of the next few years.
And like we're all walking the same direction towards death, just at different times. And it's like it's all happened to everybody, and it's like I guess like younger people are just like less like empathetic about it as well, because like they think when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, it's never going to happen to me, and it's like it's happening to everybody. Yeah.
Well, and there's a bit of an angle that comes with sort of the air quotes sandwich generation as well, right?
What does that mean?
So sandwich generation is basically when you are equally responsible for, say, your kids.
Yeah.
Right. So raising your kids while you're also dealing with aging and dying parents.
Yeah. Okay,
right.
Okay.
So you're kind of being yanked in both different directions, and that's a bit of a head fuck as well.
Yeah. Geez.
So that's where, again, when you start seeing your parents start to get ill or aging or whatever it is, or if in situations when they do pass on, that really starts to put your own mortality into question. For sure, right? Then you start also thinking like, what is important, right? So going back to when we first started chatting about the conscious decision to re-pick up the guitar after my dad passed away.
Yeah,
that's an important thing to me. And why have I ignored that important thing for a long period of time? Because it gives me a lot of pleasure. I enjoy playing it. I enjoy playing with other people. I enjoy, the fact that we're able to get out there and play in front of other people and watch somebody sing and dance to something that you've created. That's a huge part of life, right? But
Yeah.
for 2 decades, that wasn't important at all for a whole host of different reasons.
I guess different priorities, perhaps.
Different priorities, yeah, exactly, right. And those are the different sort of chapters that you go through. But you start really putting stuff into perspective when, we're not trying to sound like a bunch of killjoys here. It's like, people are gonna be watching this like, what's wrong with these people, But that is a big part of it, right? And I think again, going back to the mental health piece, that is a part of that conversation, right? So,
yeah, I feel like we would probably go back and forth about this for a long time. Okay, anyway, let's see how much time. All right. So yeah, these are more like kind of like standard questions. I ask. Mm-hmm. When you guys play a show, is there like any kind of rituals that you guys do beforehand, like pre-show rituals?
Well, there actually is some of the.
Yeah, what are they?
Well, I mean, something as simple as we always, after sound check, we always go out and dine, and we have our favorite places to dine associated with the venues we're playing.
Can you actually like list the venue and then the place to dine that you like to go to?
Yeah, well, I actually list one that we just lost, unfortunately. But when we play at Live on Elgin, we've always eaten at the Clock Tower Pub, which unfortunately just closed.
Oh, just closed?
Right.
Oh,
but
man.
that was a ritual of ours. We always knew we were going to the Clock Tower Pub and we had our meals too.
Yeah.
Our band, for Live on Elgin, I'll say went there every time, but we did go there sometimes. Yeah. Was there other venues? Like, let's say you play Avant-Garde. Is there anything like
Clock Tower Pub is one I'm reading.
Oh, the one in Rito. Yeah. So you're looking for a clock tower where you're going.
It wasn't necessarily like a conscious decision. It's just like, where can we go eat? Oh, there's a Clock Tower Pub.
Yeah,
and it just kind of became a habit, right? Or a ritual. It's
pretty reliable pub for like for food and stuff.
And we also know we're probably going to get a seat. I mean, that might change as the summer rolls out, and we are a band that manifested, during the COVID years, but Clock Tower treats us well.
Yeah. Share the Clock Tower. They can advertise this video.
Yeah.
But so you sound check, you go for dinner and then like come back and play. That's like
we always come back and like in time for the show.
Right?
Show,
yeah.
Like,
we want to catch the first.
We're never gonna skip out on people that we're playing with. If we're headlining.
But you don't put your hands together and go,
there's no, there's no rah.
No.
Yeah. Reading from.
We don't have the big hugs or anything like that. But,
The rest of it's just try not to forget your lyrics.
Is there any stage fright you guys experience?
Yeah, less so now than
a lot less now.
Yeah,
just because you've been doing it for longer, or what?
I think we also know the songs now. I mean, Ian carries the brunt of this with the lyrics, the lead, and and the introductions and the chitter chatter. But the songs, because we play them every week, and we've been doing these songs for 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in our DNA. Once again, back to a term we referenced earlier in this interview. Comfort. We're just so comfortable with the songs now and our parts in the songs that we can actually, I find personally, I can just enjoy the show now.
It's kind of like the songs are like in muscle memory. You can kind of
never take it for granted because I always want to do the best job. And I know when I'm going to play, like, look how far we've come. I've got that transition I talked about. Like, I got to pay attention. But at the early days, I mean, it was the dry mouth. It was the tension and forgetting things just because I was overthinking them. Yeah. But all that seems for me.
And you want to make a decent impression too, right? I mean, and that's a big thing. I think now we see a lot of familiar faces come out to shows, and there's an element of comfort that comes along with that. So you always want to give people the best performance that you can. It's a $10 price point or whatever. You want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth and enjoying it.
It's a good deal. I think $10.
But the first show that we did, I can think, right coming out of COVID, I was just a hot mess. Like, I was really, really, really nervous. Like, super, super nervous, right? Because we'd maintained a lot of contact and built up some good relationships with people, like during COVID, just more virtually.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're showing up to play for them for the first time. And it was really nerve-wracking. Like, I really did not. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be all dramatic here, but it was really. If you're talking about a case of stage fright, it was a case of stage fright. Like,
it's like you're I guess like you're keeping track of people, like talking to people digitally, and then you meet them in person. It's like you want to make sure you're doing a good job.
And you're not blowing smoke up there, type of thing, or what you've recorded actually translates live as well, right?
That's a tricky thing, too.
And again, like we're four middle-aged white dudes playing loud rock music, like you're always kind of like are there going to be people in the audience looking at us going like, is this necessary? Like why? why is this configuration happening, right? But at the same time, like I think with more and more of that, it's just like the confidence level just gets there. So the last show that we played at Live on Elgin with Backstreet Dragon and JJ Parks, what a wonderful night! Like it was just absolutely just a great evening. Like all the performers were like just top notch. The crowd was completely into it. It was just a lot of fun, and just whatever stage fright you had, just was just not even there.
So another, I guess maybe it's gonna be the same answer. What is your favorite show you've played, like as a band?
Jeez,
it doesn't have to be that show. I mean, I don't want to pressure you into that.
No,
It was a great show.
That is a good question. I can't think of one that hasn't been.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that question, I'd have to probably tie it to just the nuances in the venues, because they offer different perspectives on the music. But
there's a show we played with Stobie and Holy Christopher at Avant Garde once there. That was particularly. Oh hey. No, but that is a good point. We played in Montreal with Basement Dweller and Saint Denis at this place called the Blue Dog, and talk about like the nuance of a venue. Like there was like puddles of water on the floor, like under my pedal board. Like,
oh no, that's dangerous, man.
It was a really, really cool night though, and like most
phenomenal.
Like nobody there knew who we were. Like but
smoke show, light show.
Wait, while you were playing, there's a smoke show going on?
Fancy.
Okay, cool.
So I mean that was interesting. It was not particularly like it's set up for live music, but it's more of a like they'll do like live music from like 7 to 10, and then it's like a dance venue for the rest of the evening, right? So it's kind of like a multi-purpose style place versus like somewhere like Live on Elgin or the Rainbow, which is more set up for purpose, right? For live music. So you have to kind of adapt to that. It's like I can't hear anything, right? So you talk about the memory, the muscle memory kicking in. To like you're literally going off of that, because he probably can't hear me, I can't hear him, Fred maybe can hear Steve can maybe hear my amp because it's in front of his kick drum. Like it's like so you're really kind of going off of like feel and trying to deliver, but those types of venues also, like they're charming too, right? Because it's like playing in somebody's basement.
One of my favorite things is playing Avant Garde, where I always stand left stage and I always have to move for people coming in.
I know exactly.
I love it. I love it. It's part of my sort of experience when I'm doing that. But.
And you're playing to people that are like right in front of your face versus like when we played the Rainbow for the first time. That was the first time we were actually elevated above the audience.
I could see everybody.
So that was a weird feeling because we weren't used to that, right? So
I guess I guess Elgin has a small. It's not as it's a little bit
wider.
So the lights are right in your eyes at Elgin too, right? Whereas at the Rainbow, you actually have a great view of the pit in front of you, and you can see the balcony. So eye contact is something that I knew I had to get used to. I actually made a few mistakes just because I was catching eyes, which I'm not used to. At Live in Elgin, I can see the first foot. So I can just focus on my music.
Oh, I get your thing. So you're looking down and then you can see people's eyes. Oh, I got you.
And the lights, the way the stage is set up, it's a much more expansive stage. So the lights are up, pointing down. Live in Elgin, for example, they're right here. So your vision into the audience, it becomes an experience of the band playing for shadows, moving shadows, wonderful shadows. But at the Rainbow, it was a band playing for recognizable names and faces.
You're right.
It's a different experience.
I didn't realize that, but it's true. I can definitely recognize people in the crowd when I was playing. It's not Rainbow. Holy. I guess the final part was to say is like, do you have any new recordings coming up? I'm pretty sure you guys are going to ride this. Are you going to be making more recordings already?
We have a little something that's coming out.
Oh, you do?
I'm not at liberty to talk about it because it's not my project.
Oh, whose project? Oh, you can't see whose project it is.
It's a project.
All right, cool.
Possibly you were involved in a previous iteration of the same project.
Oh, okay. All right.
If that makes any sense, but I'm not in control of the narrative of that one. So I will say people can expect to hear something between now and later that is new.
But you say that you both are involved in this project, I'm assuming.
Well, the band is.
Yeah,
The band has
Yeah.
recorded a song and has given it to the people that are running this
Yes,
particular
okay.
initiative.
Because I think you referred to it as I'm involved in the project.
Oh, sorry, that was
Okay.
A grammatical error on
Okay,
my
okay.
part. Apologies.
I understand.
Apologies to the audience.
I understand what you're talking about. Cool. That will be probably coming out in the spring season, I imagine.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my understanding.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. I don't know how quite I ever end these things. It's like,
Well, it was our
Let us
absolute,
thank you then.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
It was our absolute
That's awesome.
pleasure to join us.